name's Craig Tarwater. I'd like to welcome you to this video school of guitar production entitled How to Play, well, you just saw it, Great Rock Guitar Level 2. So first let's get going with a nice clean tune-up note. Okay, this will be an A. I'll give you that again. And then I'll give you a 12th fret harmonic also. One more, just to be sure. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to show you some rhythm variations, and we're going to ask you to watch my left hand and also a chart that will be on the other half of your screen. I'll be referring constantly to one of 5 shapes: the C form, the A form, the G form, the E form, or the D form. We're going to use this a little bit later on after we give you some rhythm demonstrations to show you the scales and how they fit right on top of the chord shapes. So we're going to take over where we left off in level 1. Okay, so we'll go to the chart now. All right, people, what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how the shapes of chords move up the fingerboard in a given key. And we're going to give you 5 keys, the 5 keys that are most popularly used to play the guitar in. There's other keys as well. It's merely a matter of moving up or down. So first, let's go ahead and look at the C form shape on the fingerboard with the left hand. All right? We're going to play a basic chord. You all know this chord. It's called the C chord. Okay. Now, there are other types of chords you can play besides just the C major, staying in the C form. You can take your first finger off and play a C major 7. I have some chorus on here just to take away some of the boredom and sound. You can also play a C7. You can do other kinds of little permutations of the C major. You can put the G on the top like that with the pinky or the 3rd finger, whichever you want to use. I use the pinky. Okay, you can also play just a bass note chord. You can also play a sus chord. You can also play a sus 7 chord. That goes real nice back and forth. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Okay? Now the one thing we do want to be sure of is if we learn to play this chord with the last 3 fingers, then we're in position to take our what's called our bar chord form shape and move it up the fingerboard. Okay? So that means if we know what this note is right there, which is a C, then if we move it up the fingerboard, we're playing a D chord because we know that's a D note. So we have to learn the names of the notes on the fingerboard. But first let's go back a little bit and just about the C shape. Okay? A lot of people don't know that, I should say they do not know, that the C chord and the F chord and the G chord all go together. In addition, the C chord and the A minor chord go together real nice, as well as the F chord and the D minor chord, also the G chord. This is sort of a folk sounding shape I'm using where I've got the D note in there. So the G chord and the E minor chord go together real well. And also, the names of the notes in our C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, all form chords. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, or G7, A minor, and then the seventh chord, which is the last note of the C scale, which is B, is usually a diminished chord. At the level we'll be talking about chords in this tape, that's all the further I'm going to go. Okay, now what we need to do is learn how to take just our C chord and move it up the fingerboard. Okay, so we've got a C form here, which we eventually want to learn to play with the last three fingers so we can move it up and make bar chords. Now let's go to the A form, which is right here. That's what's called third position. That's because the first finger is on the third fret. Okay, now depending on how you finger the chord, you can make the sus chord that note is being sounded, but you can't see a finger on it because it's under the bar finger. A lot of people like stuff like that. Actually, I like it myself. Sounds pretty good. Now the C7 chord is done by letting the bar finger play this note, which is a B flat, or a third string note is good enough for what we're thinking, instead of the C that's normally in the chord right there. Okay, so that's C7, C major, C sus, and that should do for that form. Now, if we move on up to the G form, what we have is we have a chord that would normally look like this, but it's not real good sounding and it's fairly impractical to play. So I like to shorten it by just playing the pinky on the sixth string and the fourth, third, and second strings right on the fifth fret. So you notice it says fifth position, okay? Okay, so we have a couple of different things we can do then. We can add on part of an F chord, which is a C form, to the G, and we can get one of these real neat Rolling Stone type sounding things. So that's why I only play the sixth string and the other strings. The pinky lays across the fifth string without pushing it down and mutes it out. And it just adds a percussive quality to the chord anyway. There's many other things you can do if you experiment with this shape, where you can go So there's a lot of different things you can do. You just have to try adding on notes and moving fingers around once you have the basic shape. Okay, let's go ahead and go on up to the one everyone usually knows, and you probably already know this one. This is the main bar shape. This is what's called the E form. By the way, all these shapes are taken from playing their namesake with the last three fingers in the open position and then moving them up onto the correct root note. In this case, the root note is a C, but the form is still an E form. And that comes from just playing, pretend that this is the end of the neck right there. There's my E chord. You normally play it this way. Well, I'm playing it this way, and then I've got all these extra notes. The sixth string, the second string, and the first string are all sounded by the bar. Okay? And of course that makes it a C7 just by lifting off the pinky. You can also make it a sus by putting the pinky back on the third finger, where it in other words, preempts, precludes, or causes the note that sounds right there to not sound because it comes down ahead of it. So in other words, of course, everybody knows how you make a minor out of a major. You just lift off the second finger. Okay, anyhow, there's a chord. I call it the I Feel Fine chord. It's an old Beatles song. Some of you may know about it, some of you might not. Anyhow, that's a chord I don't recommend playing too much. Once again, in any of these positions, except maybe the G form, you can play some partial chords. So that's kind of using, just moving notes around and using pieces of the chord, groups of strings. Try things with the first 3 strings, then the second 3 strings, then the next 3 strings, and then the last 3 strings, and see what you can come up with. Now the next thing we're going to go to is the D form, okay? And that happens to be at 10th position, okay? So what it comes from is playing a D chord way down at the bottom end of the neck. Pretend once again this is the end of the neck and you normally play it this way. Well, play it with the last 3 fingers, and that allows you to make the root note, which in this example is a C, sound. You can put the bass note below the root, which is the root note for your 5 chord, which is a G7 or a G. You can put that right on the bottom. Okay, that has some advantages too. You can do these kind of things once you learn about using your fingers, like putting your first finger on the 10th fret on the first string and just playing the little triad here, and watch what happens when you take off the 3rd finger. If you lay down the pinky, lift it back up, put the 3rd finger down, you get that little combination. And you can even have an accident like hitting the 4th string sound good with it too. And then of course you'll have these little riffs that we'll be talking about in the future here. Okay, so there's just about a billion things you can do once you learn where you're at with just C. Okay, next let's go ahead and move on to A, because we'd like for you to see all of this. Alright, so we're going to go back down here to the end of the fingerboard, and our A form, we don't have an A form for A unless we just play an open A chord. But there aren't any practical scale shapes in it, so I'm going to be starting with the G form, which will borrow from parts of the A chord. So here's the G form. Okay, then what you get is things like this. That's using a portion of a C form D without the D over the A bass note, which can be an open string, or you can put it down with the pinky. I like to use the pinky, but I don't have to. I can use either because I'm pick the 5th, fret the 6th, pick the 5th, fret the 6th. You just learn to do these things instinctively by practicing. So you have that's a little 6th triad of G. Don't worry about the names, just learn the little shape. Put those together. Sounds real nice over the A bass note. So we don't really have a good A7 chord right here, so we're not going to worry about it. We have a nice G major. Okay, we can use an A7 down here. Some guys play it like that, I don't know how. It's always better to use your skinny fingers, your little fingers, and save your first finger for the bars and for notes that are in the low side of the position, like. Okay, so anyhow, enough on the G form. Now what we'll do is we'll move up to the E form. Same as our C, key of C, E form, which was at the 8th fret. Here it is, and I can go right back down, and there's an A chord. So that's the name of the chord. So wherever you put that, it's an A flat, G, whatever, okay? So this is all the same information you just had. Okay, but this is in A now. So next, after the E form, we can go to the D form. Okay, then same tricks as we used in the D form 10th position for C, but now we're only in 7th position for A. Now, here's the high chord, the one that we couldn't get down at the, well, we're not there yet, but we're close. This is the next form, the C shape. Okay, so this is the C shape. But this is an A chord. That's an A. That's the 12th fret right there. Okay, open A, 12th fret A. Okay, so okay, so one thing you'll be wanting to learn is, and you may start with a C form, you'll be wanting to learn how your first chord, your 4th chord, your 5th chord, your 6th chord, your 3rd chord, and your 2nd chord all fit in the same position. So watch me play sort of a scaly sounding A progression using A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, and E major, F sharp minor, and if I want, G sharp diminished. Okay, those happen to be the 3 sharps in the key of A. C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. Okay, but anyhow, so here we're ready to go up to the 12th fret, and this is a very hard chord to play. It's almost impossible. I used to be able to play it when I was young, when I first started. I can almost get all of it to sound. So it's better to play it this way. Just play the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings, and then the 5th. You just play the inside 4 strings. So it's a 3rd finger bar and a 1st finger note. Of course, you can do a lot of little things. You can go. Same thing you could do with the A form in C, only it was clear down in 3rd position. Now we're at 12th position. Okay, so let's just go ahead and go on down to G, the key of G, and we'll show you the basic thing. Now the G form happens to be its namesake in the key of G. Okay, But most people play it like this. It's much better to play it this way. First of all, that gives you a chance to do this. And if you can tuck your first finger there and there, you can do that too. So you can go. Okay. And the next thing we should do then is we'll go up to the E form. Same old familiar E form, but it happens to be a G chord because that's a G note. And just because I said so, how about that? Okay, now next, we're just going to go ahead and go briskly here. This is the D form. Okay, it's 5th position. Here's the C form. It's 7th position. Here's that abbreviated form at 10th position, which is called the A form. Remember, you can do that, but it just sounds better like this anyway. Okay, and that's the end of the key of G. Okay, so we'll go down to the key of E, and we have an E chord. Its namesake, which I also submit should be learned this way, because that way you can get used to going between E and F. Make everything work in harmony. Your fingers all move at once, except when you have to do it. Okay, so we have in the key of E, you don't see an E form being something practical to play from. One of the reasons I've set up the forms in the positions they're in is to do with the scales, which we'll be doing in a little bit after we have some rhythm fun. Okay, so the first thing we really have in the key of E that's on the fingerboard, which is what I like to think of, because the only way you can get a concept for the movable shapes is to play them on the fingerboard. Okay, so the D form is first. Same D form you've seen wherever you've seen it. Now let's go ahead and go to the C form. Same one you've seen. There's a D chord, C form. E chord, C form. F chord, C form. Okay, so C form, very important shape. In very old times, this is the first shape on the fingerboard at the first fret that the guitar was taught from. The Nick Maniloff method. See if you can find an old book. Perhaps it'll show you why it was such a good way to teach. Okay, the next form is our A form. Once again, I like to abbreviate it. Also, the abbreviated form gives you your power chord, as it is so commonly called, which is really just the E note and the B note, which is the 5th note of the E scale. Once again, why is it a 5th note? Do, re, mi, fa, so. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So do, re, mi, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the other two numbers is how everything is figured out. Okay, so anyhow, we have an A form. That's the key of E. Then we go to a G form. A little bit, gets a little tight playing the G form up high, but it can be done. Okay, then the last form is the E form, which is the E chord, the same one we played like this down at the end, at the very end of the neck, not this end, that end. And this is the one we play at the 12th fret. Once again, the reason this is shown at the end of this structure instead of at the beginning is because the scale can be played here. Whereas it can't exactly be played at the bottom end. It can, but It can't be visualized as something you can move onto the fingerboard. So our last key is the key of D. And of course, I haven't shown the D shape first because you can't play a scale. You can play a country scale, but you can't play the rock scale. This is a rock tape, not a country tape. So the C shape is first. Second position, A shape, fifth position, G shape, seventh position, E shape at 10th position, and D shape at 12th position. Okay, now with that we're going to go ahead and go to some demonstration of rhythms. Okay, now let's have a little tasty demonstration of some rhythms in the key of C, okay? This is just going to be spontaneous. We don't want to have any backup track cluttering us up on this. Okay, so here we go. You notice that I'm using my thumb, okay, on my left hand. That's not supposed to be done that way, but everybody does it, and I do it a lot. It gives me more flexibility. Now let me give you a little bit of a clean sound here, and let's slip on a little chorus here. By the way, what I'm actually using today, which I don't always use on my videos, is a Rockman X100. It's got a pretty nice overdrive sound. Also has, it's a great thing when you put on the headphones. Anyhow, here's just like some, you know, more ballad type rock rhythm ideas using more chords. Using more of the chords in the key of C. Okay, here we go. Now that particular little chord is a nice nifty one to know. It's a G11. All it really is an F triad with a G bass note. Some people call it a G7 sus4. That's fine. Learn to look for both descriptions. Now that's going to be the same in virtually any key, okay? If I was going to do that in the key of D, for instance, I'd start off with a C form. Or I might use the E minor that way instead of this way. In either case, I could even use the open D. Still works the same way, no matter how you do it. It's just you have to be sure that you understand the relationship of chords. I read something this morning before I started that made a very good point. You have to view chords as how they are related to each other instead of separate shapes and forms that you have to memorize all over the fingerboard. In other words, you should be comfortable playing in the key of D, hopefully in a variety of positions. Well, anyhow, I left C, didn't I? Now I'm back there. You can also use finger style, where you pluck part of the triad and use your pick or use the thumb and fingers. You can also arpeggiate by finger picking. Okay, now we'll go back to a no chorus overdrive sound, not a heavy overdrive sound, and we'll just put on a light overdrive sound as soon as the switch goes in the right spot. Okay, and here's some other ideas of more blues type rhythms. Use the 1, 4, 5. The 4 chord is F7. 1 chord is C7. The 5 chord is G7. One thing to point out, I'm intermixing scale things with my chord fragments. Like that's the upper triad part of a G form C chord. And there happens to be a little scale line that just fits with all that. Now, we can move this to any key. We can take the key of A. No matter what we do, we better have a good command of our triads, which are all contained within our chord shapes. So there might be, for instance, in a G form A, there might be one triad from the 6th string. If you play more of the G form A than I normally show, there might be this triad, and that triad. Okay, then of course there's going to be all that scale stuff. So we could go on forever with these chords and their forms. I think what we'd like to do now is go ahead and look at the chord chart, the shape chart, and talk about these scales, because we need to get you indoctrinated on these scales, and you got to practice them, otherwise give it up. Okay, we'll go to that next. Okay, now we're going to look at these scale shapes around the chord forms. Remember, this is a C form chord. Now, for rock, we're mainly interested in one scale and then modifications to it, for the most part. That's the pentatonic scale in minor. So that would be these notes. That's an open third string. Okay, now that's the C form. So let's go to the A form. Remember the shape? Okay, there's a scale right there too. Okay, let's go to the G form. This is the one a lot of guys don't know right here, but it's not hard, okay? Now, watch me goof. You notice my fingering changed a little bit to play fast. That's because I'm used to playing certain things with first and third fingers instead of second and fourth fingers. Okay, so that's just the way that goes. Okay, now we're going to go to the one that you probably already know. But if you had to play in the key of C, you can only play it here or maybe the A shape. Anyhow, this is the E form. Okay, and if I said that was the A shape, I meant the E shape. If I was wrong, I apologize. It's the E shape. That's the one everyone knows. Here's the D shape. Another one that generally only more advanced guitarists know. This is the D shape. That's the end of the key of C. Let's go and quickly look at the key of A. Okay. A shows that we really start at the G form. Okay. Because the A form can't be done. So let's just do the G form, because that's the one that works. Same thing. Same thing we just did in the last key on a G form, just in a different spot. Okay, so let's go up to the one everyone knows, the E form. While we're at this spot, I'm going to just take a quick time out here to tell you about playing the scale in sequence, which is one of the places you'll get some useful licks out of the scale right away. If you start from the highest note in the A minor pentatonic scale in 5th position, which is an E form, and you start on the C note and you go down 4 notes. So you go C, A, G, E, all right? And then you start on an A. Go down to the G, E, what you're doing is you're playing 4 notes, and then each time you start over 1 note lower on the scale. The next place you would start for start number 3, I'll call it G, E, D, C. Then we would be starting on E. So watch how this works if I do it slow. And I'm going to count the notes out loud. I'm descending the scale, 4 notes at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Start on the next lower note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next lower note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next lower note, and so forth and so on. So if you play it a little bit faster, but not too fast, just with an even cadence or rhythm, it would sound like this. Put a little slide on the end and you're done. Okay, next we'll move up to the D form. Okay, this is for the key of A. Now we'll go to the C form. Another one not too many guys know in the key of A. Okay, and here it is. Whoa, great. The only reason I made that mistake is I was playing too slow, beneath my speed. Yuck, yuck. Okay, so the last one is the A form, which you know in any key, probably. Notice I'm shortening up the fingers because the frets are so close together. The normal rule of thumb for playing guitar is a finger on each fret. Makes it a little hard for you to see out there in TV land. So, this is 12th position, folks. Okay, now let's go to the key of G. We have 2 more keys to cover after that. Here's the key of G, and this one we can do the E form first, because if we don't do the E form, what we have is this. We have a hodgepodge of a G form with some open strings. So let's just go to the E form, because this is the movable shape on the fingerboard. If I move back down just for a second, watch what happens if I try to play that scale. And let's see how it works. It does work, but you can't visualize that moving because there's open strings involved. So, the E form is the first place to start. Now let's go ahead and go on up to the D form. Okay, and that's right here, and that's at 5th position. Okay, next would be our C form, and that's at 7th position. I did it again, didn't I? It's too too slow, that's why. Okay, then we'll go up to the A form, and that's the last one in the key of G. Okay, now we'll go on to the key of E. In the key of E, we see that the D form is first. By the way, I was slightly mistaken, not paying attention to my own chart. In the key of D, you could play the G form. You just needed to remember that some strings were open. Okay, so here we are in the key of E at the D form. All right. Whether you choose to start on the high A or the G note of that scale is up to you. The first time I showed it was with the A note, the next time was with the G note. Okay, so let's go on up to the C form. Okay, now let's go on to the A form. Okay, then let's go on to the G form. The reason we call it ninth position is there is one note that's in the scale, right there, the E, and it's on the 9th fret. Sometimes in these scales our hand shifts up and down one fret, depending on how we finger the pattern. Okay, the last form in the key of E is the E form. This is the one you see the guys that only know this shape. They'll be playing down on the low end of the fingerboard, and then they scream up here, you know, do something like that, or and then they go down and play it real low, clear down here. Okay, I won't try to outrun the camera. And the last key is the key of D. Okay, whereupon we have, in accordance with old-time teaching methods, second position C form. So here's our scale. Then we go to the A form, and it is at 5th position. Then we're going to go to the G form, and that's at 7th position. There's one note on the 7th fret, that's why it's 7th position. There's another one. Okay, then we'll go to the E form, 10th position, the one everybody knows. The more advanced intermediate players will leap up here to play a D lick for the D chord while they're in the key of G, for instance, using the same form at 3rd position for a G. But we don't want to do that. We want to be able to play everything in one position. Okay? So, the last form is the D form. This is, once again, with the sparse fingering, so you can see the notes clearly. Alrighty. Now what we're going to do is just in the key of A, because we could go over and over. In the key of A we'll show you, because it's the most popular key anyhow. We're going to put these examples together of playing with the G form, the E form, the D form, and the C form, and the A form up high. And we're going to play in the key of A. We're going to use these scales and these little chord things, but mostly we're going to play lead now. We want to play some lead examples just using these simple scales, okay? Good idea is to play a couple of strings at a time. Try pull-offs, hammer-ons, pull off, hammer on to another adjacent string. Okay, and that's how it works. So let's go ahead and we'll tip the band and go for it. This is in the key of A. Well, I hope you got something out of this, and I'd like to thank you very much for participating. I invite you to review the tape and rewind and learn about the chords, the chord fragments, and the scale shapes, and So I'll see you next time in level 3. Okay? Now we're going to play a little bit on the way out in the key of D. A little bit of country rock.
Home Sweet Home, country rock.